So in Kachim, right, the night actually follows the day. In other words, don't be so sure that we believe that the night comes before the day in Judaism. Unlike the rest of, the rest of the world thinks that the day happens and then the night. And we're like, no, you don't understand. The night happens and then the day. Not exactly. We had both opinions. When it comes to creation, the day follows the night. Because creation, it starts with concealment, right? And then you try and bring the revelation into the creation. But in Kachim, it's the opposite, right? It's holy to begin with, and you want to bring that holiness into the dark. So, for example, if you offer a sacrifice in the day, it's still kosher until Alas HaShachar, or according to the Rabbanin, until Chatzos. So you can in other words, this is what Mariv is, right? Mariv is really a davening that we have in place of the sacrifice. There's no sacrifice at night. It's a continuation of the sacrifice of the day. So what do we see from here? In holy matters, literally Kachim, but also in all holy matters, the night follows the day. And therefore, all the Farbrengens, the Chassidus Farbrengens, they happen because they're Kachim, we have the Farbrengen the night after, which is not the night after. That day is night.
So why is the Yom Kodesh the prime example that starts with night and ends with day?
Say it again?
Yom Kodesh, Shabbat.
Yom Kodesh.
Yeah, that's the prime example of something that starts at night.
On the contrary, what is the whole Indian of the fourth meal of Shabbos? Why do we call it the fourth meal of Shabbos? Because Shabbos really took with it both, right? The whole idea of Malava Malka. We say a Mavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. There's a mimer that says, some people in the world think that Mavdil ben Kodesh L'chol means you make a separation between the holy and the mundane. So Chassidus says, no, Chas v'shalom, that's not what it says. It says, Baruch ha-Mavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. You're making a bracha and a amshacha from the Kodesh to the Chol because you're continuing Shabbos into the weekday, because that's the whole purpose of Shabbos actually, is that Shabbos should leak out and ultimately be Yom Shekulo Shabbos, a day which is all Shabbos, which is Yom Shekulo Aroch and Mashiach. So the idea of the highest levels of Shabbos is, what do we call it? The Malava Malka, David Malka Mashiach. This is the meal of Mashiach. What? It's just what does that have to do with Sunday? Okay. Right? It's got nothing to do with Sunday. It's got everything to do with that Shabbos goes into the night, and it's now the holy fourth meal of Shabbos.
It's like his day is making a shlichut into the next day.
Kal v'chomer the shlichus of the Rebbe. But every Chassidish holiday. So really tonight's the main night. Not saying that I'm going to come for brain with you guys. I'm just saying there's reason for it. I'm just trying to get the misnagid out of the room. So I give him don't give him any excuses.
Are you bringing with us tonight?
No excuses, that one. Yeah, all that. Yeah.
Okay, let's get back into our conversation here. B'ezrat Hashem, that's the plan. We got to strengthen ourselves. V'chazakta va'is la'ish. Strengthen yourself and be a man. There we go. It doesn't require any mashka or any late nights. It just requires bringing out the panemius of your neshama.
No, but it's hard to sit for braiding when you don't drink. You drink water. You're watching everyone else drink.
Why does everyone have to drink?
So that's what I'm saying. Like last night, I was there for like an hour and I had to bounce because everyone was getting ripped.
That's not okay. Okay, let's spend a few minutes actually learning. So to catch up and realign ourselves where we are in this kuntris of the Rebbe, which is that the laws of the oral Torah will never be nullified. We started to explain the oral Torah is eternal, like the 5 books of Moses, which is even a greater quality than the Nevi'im and the Kesuvim, which will be nullified. It's a greater quality than all the Shakla V'Tarya, which is the Gemara and the Mishnah, all that will be nullified because just the Psak Din will last forever. So we said, wow, that's amazing. Then we said, wait a second, isn't it true that it's going to change? How can you say it's never going to be nullified? All the laws in the future are going to go like Shammai, right? And furthermore, we said, there's a Gemara in Nida, right? Samich Hey, where it says that mitzvahs betelis lasid lavo. Not only are there not going to be halachas of the oral Torah, there won't even be any mitzvahs in the future, right? So how does this go together with the idea that the oral Torah is eternal, right? And it doesn't, right? We sort of locked ourselves into a little backed into a corner here because there's two Divrei Chazal which completely contradict each other. So we're looking for a way to resolve them. And the first way we resolve them is to say that mitzvahs are, for the oral Torah is forever, right? Was that we said it doesn't really mean forever, right? What does it mean? We said it means,
Oh, yeah.
That's a missile.
bring it on.
It's coming in or coming up?
That patriot. Oh,
Life's so interesting in the north. So that we said maybe it means that it's eternal. The oral Torah is eternal, so to speak, as long as as we need them, right? In other words, you could look at it as a mitzvah. Hashem wants something done out of these mitzvahs. He wants something from the mitzvahs. That's what a mitzvah is. It's my will, and the will is therefore saying that you have to accomplish the refinement of the world. And therefore, one could think that when you're done refining the world, we could put the mitzvahs away. And we don't have the mitzvahs anymore. Or, as we're going to see in the footnote that we're going to start with today, you might say, new mitzvahs, we'll have new mitzvahs when Mashiach comes, because those mitzvahs that we had before got us to this stage. And so the eternality doesn't really mean eternality. It means the eternality of the time that they're needed. That's one way to try and sort of dance around this. The Rabbi comes with like a Hasidic understanding of what a mitzvah is. He says, no, that doesn't make any sense. Why? Because the mitzvahs are not the will in the external sense of the word will, where you want something for the sake of something else. There's a will that you want something for the sake of something else, but that something else that you want is also called the will, but it's a higher level of will. It's called an eternal, intrinsic will. You don't want it because it gives you something. You have an intrinsic desire for it, which does not have any reason for it. It's just like something that is essentially a desire within you that doesn't for the sake of something else. And he says this is what the mitzvahs are, and therefore it's not shaykh to say that they're going to go away. That's where we got up to yesterday. Before we sort of move on at that point, there's just an interesting kind of wild footnote 31 here, where there is actually Torah opinions, right? Obviously, we don't hold like these opinions, but it's interesting to just see the breadth and scope of the Torah, that there are opinions that those mitzvahs will be batal, right? We learned the Gemara, that why are we allowed to bury a person in shatnez? Because when he wakes up from the dead, he's going to rise from the dead, right? There's not going to be any more mitzvahs. And so Rav Yosef learns from here, mitzvahs will be batal. People took this seriously. They tried to figure out what that means. So they said, well, look at footnote 31, right? Ma monea shelo yehu yisbarach mosivo gereya kashetik zorchach mosi yisbarach. What's holding us back? This comes from the das of the Ikarim. What's holding us back? That if Hashem wants to, He can add or subtract if His wisdom determines such from the mitzvahs, right? He says, Hishra koshi kavar efshar sheishtana kefi hachanas hamakablim ki amazon hashav el hayelid hu achal v'ashav el habachur hu alechem v'abasar v'yayin. He says we can see how this the utility of a commandment is really depending on the receiver of the commandment. And he gives an example: food that's fit for a baby is milk and honey, right? And food that's fit for an adult is bread and wine and meat. So he says, Kain yishtanu mitzvahs elokius. So will the mitzvahs change? This is a wild opinion, because the receivers of those mitzvahs will change. The world's going to be a different place. Hashem's going to give us a whole new set of mitzvahs. This is like, to the extent that you could take this conversation, mitzvahs will be batul. They're literally going to be different ones. The Rebbe doesn't like it. The Rebbe said, this is crazy. It goes against the whole concept of Chassidus. These mitzvahs are the eternal oneness with Hashem. That's where we left off. Shall we continue inside? Fine, so please take it from page 452, the second column, last paragraph on the page in the brackets. You see that? Everybody? Page 452, second column, last paragraph on that page with the brackets. Zeu achiluk shebein mitzvahs haTorah latzivoyim sha'adei neviim. This, in fact, is the difference between the mitzvahs. The Rebbe is now going on this idea that the mitzvahs, of course, can't be changed. And for sure, they're eternal. This is the difference between the mitzvahs of the Torah versus those commandments that were given to the prophets. The mitzvahs that were given to the prophets, they are like the mitzvahs that we just negated. They're in order for another reason, right? In other words, why did the prophets command the people and things? Not because those were the intrinsic desires of Hashem, but they commanded them because they wanted something out of that experience, something else. Lo mi boy atzivoy b'divra rashus. It goes without saying the commandments they gave them, which were like sort of temporary commandments on how to conduct their lives as prophets. They gave them instructions. Kagon l'chu l'makom ploni or al teilchu. Like they said, go here or don't go here. There were sort of instructions live from God through the mouth of a prophet, which were mitzvahs, because if God's telling you go there or don't go there, He's commanding you. But that type of commandment is not in the same category as the 613 commandments of the actual Torah. So it goes without saying those types of commandments, elegam tzivoy b'inyanei Torah, but even the commandments which do have to do with Torah, they're not impermissible matters. If the Jews should fight this war or not fight this war, there's commandments that are shaykh to Torah in the Nevi'im. So mechuven b'tachlis, what's the purpose of those commandments? Einu b'tzivoy ze'atzmu, the purpose of the command was not the command itself. It's not Hashem issued a command through the prophets and it's like it has a standalone value on its own. No, it was for something else. Litzavos al divrei Torah lahazira am shelo yavru aleh. What was the commandment? So say, keep the Torah, right? In other words, it was bringing them back to the Torah of Moshe. So it was a command. I want you to keep this Torah, but it was only pushing them back to the original. So that those commandments of the prophets were, so to speak, temporary and for the sake of something else. That's why they were only temporary commandments. And that's why you should look at footnote 34, to the point that the prophecy, even those prophecies that are written in the books of the prophets, they will actually also be nullified in the future. That we agree with. Certain mitzvahs will be nullified in the future, the kind that are temporary, which only brings us back to the reality that the Torah's mitzvahs are not that kind, and they won't be nullified. Whereas the mitzvahs of Torah are eternal, as we keep quoting this Rambam over and over again, mitzvah omeres li olam ula olamim, it is a mitzvah which will stand forever and forever and forever, because they're the intrinsic will of Hashem. They're not there for something else. Yoshua.
I've always said all the mitzvahs there, that they're just Nevi'im, that they reveal it, but that they're all sourced from the Torah.
You can find those kind of commandments of the Nevi'im in the Torah to tell you to keep the Torah. Right? But they're commandments just referring you back to keeping the Torah. Those secondary commandments, so to speak, you might find them also. Guess where else you're going to find the Torah? You playing with your tzitzis right now. Right? There's nothing that's not found in the Torah. Right? But the fact that the Torah is going to explain to you the future and so forth, it's not the same concept that we're talking about, right? We're talking about the mitzvahs which are found in the Torah, that they are eternal. The fact that there's going to be a prophet who's going to then command you to keep what Moshe told you to do, yes, it's found in the Torah, and so in a sense, like that Ruach HaKodesh, which is in there, is eternally found in the Torah, but the mitzvah itself is not something intrinsic, and to the point that it's going to be nullified in the future. Those mitzvahs, they're going to be nullified. Yeah. A mitzvah of Navi, we just got through saying, are in two types. They could either tell you, fight this war, don't fight this war, which is God speaking through His mouth and commanding you. But it's a temporary thing that has to do with a permissible act. But there's also them telling you, you have sinned, you have to go against your wayward ways and return yourself to the Torah of Moshe, which is a commandment from God coming through the mouth of a prophet. But it's not, that commandment is only for the sake of something else. It's not intrinsic. So those are the two types of mitzvahs from the prophets that will be nullified.
So do we have things like that today that we can call mitzvahs of the prophet? Can we say like Rabbi said something that's a mitzvah of a prophet? I don't know how would that apply today?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say if the Rebbe tells you, go to Spain to be a shliach, but then at some point you want to come home. It's not like that being in Spain, for Dan Tzaddik to be in Spain is an intrinsic will of Hashem forever. Li'olam u'la'ol me'olamim. It was in order to accomplish something, but the mitzvahs, the 630 mitzvahs, they're part of God Himself. They're part of His nature. They're not something that He needs them for something else. They have intrinsic value, right? It's sort of like the difference between two different types of love. We talk about the difference between the love of a father and a son versus the love of anybody else, including even a wife. All other loves are transactional in some level. You love the person because of what they do for you. And even though it sounds a little bit chitzonius, you write a contract before you get married. I'll do this, this, and this. You do this, this, and this. Deal. Let's sign it. I'll give you a ring. Right? But when it comes to a love of a father and a son, there's no deal. Why? Because the son is the father. He doesn't love him because he gives him something or he does something for him. He just like he loves himself. It's a piece of him, and they're intrinsically entwined. It's called an essential love, and it's not for the sake of something else. So too, the mitzvahs are like one with Hashem. They're essential to Him. They're not for the sake of something else.
One more thing.
Are you sure it's only one more thing?
Yes.
Okay.
You said that the commandments where to fight a war or not are going to be nullified in the future because
They will be nullified in the future.
to us anymore.
Right.
But they're also not relevant to us right now. So why are they not nullified right now?
I'm saying because now we still learn the lessons from them, right? Where the prophets are not nullified because these are all sort of part of our ability to finish the job of bringing the world to the state of Mashiach. We need to know what the prophets say. We need to understand what we learn from when that war was to be fought or when it wasn't to be fought. In other words, the commandment was a one-time thing, but its presence in the written Torah is still relevant to us to learn from. At some point, it's not going to be relevant for us to learn from anymore. Let's do later. Mizeh, move on. There's just a lot of twists and turns in this thing, so we do want to kind of stay on bird's eye view. After the brackets, Mizeh, move on. She'ein lo mashanitzchius the mitzvahs the Torah hirak b'meshech hazman da'ayom lasosam. So here the Rebbe openly rejects this premise that the eternality of the mitzvahs is only for a period of time, the time when we have to get the job done. During that time, the Jewish people are busy fixing the world and using the mitzvahs for their utilitarian purpose. And then you might say that afterwards, in the time when the work is done and you're just sitting there to receive the reward, then those mitzvahs would go away. He says, no. This will that we're discussing is an eternal will. It does not depend and does not change on any changes that will take place in the man or the world. Even if the world is perfect or the world is imperfect, the mitzvahs are an intrinsic desire of Hashem. And therefore, we're back to question number one, right where we started off. We tried to say that the concept of the eternality of the Torah was the one who had to bend towards this notion of mitzvahs are batul, right? But we're saying no, we can't take away the eternality of the mitzvahs. So now where are we going to turn? Then we have to sort of realign our idea of what it means mitzvahs will be batul in the future because they're going to be eternal. So now we have to deal with this other contradictory statement where it says they're going to be batul. Let's look at that and review because the idea of saying that they're not eternal, we're not biting. Okay. Let's look at footnote 35. So this is getting back into the Rebbe Rashab's understanding of the eternal ratzon of the mitzvahs. He says, ratzon the mitzvahs hu ratzon atzmi she'enu mishtana. This is in the words of the Rebbe Rashab, the same concept we just discussed, that the mitzvahs are eternal and will not change because they're the will of Hashem. So the Rebbe Rashab weighs in on this, and he says that the mitzvahs will be nullified in the future. Here's an answer. He says they're not. It doesn't mean they're actually going to be nullified. God forbid. He gives a different answer. We're going to give it a go. Right? Try the other direction. How do we understand the mitzvahs will be batul if the Torah is eternal? Because they will be batul in the sense that they're going to be in a level of heder tefisas makom. What does it mean? What does those words mean? They won't take up place anymore in the place of the awesome light that will shine in the future. It's kind of like a candle in the afternoon. A candle at night, you see it and it lights up the place. A candle in the afternoon, it doesn't do anything for you. It's not that it's not there, not that it went away. It's just that it's unnoticeable because of the awesome light that will be shining in the future. That's what it means according to Rebbe Rashab in this footnote. Mitzvahs will be batul. They'll be there, but like absolutely insignificant to the point that you're not even able to sort of make them out because of some other reality which is going to overshine them.
Well, it's like we say with Yom Tovs.
What's that?
It's like we say with Yom Tovs, like every day will be
yes.
so much light.
He actually says, Kishraga b'tihara, just like a candle in the afternoon. The Rebbe is an honest broker. He says, but hold on. This is Rabbi Rashab, he's sort of making a caveat too, so it's not a small thing. He says, this is a good answer, but truth be told, it's not really shayech to the simple sugya of nida. Al derech din kavura b'kilayim, when it talks about the actual being buried in shatnez, in a mixture of wool and linen. Afal pish la'asid yamor b'milvushav shnikv behem kevan shemitzvah zutelus. In other words, he's still going to have to get up in a garment of shatnez, right? And that's like a mitzvah's lo saseh. So if you want to say that this is awesome light which is going to nullify the mitzvahs, fine, I love it. Like there's this great light, it's a candle in the afternoon. You didn't really address the elephant in the room, which is that how this guy's not doing the mitzvah when he gets up cloaked in kilayim when in the Tchias HaMesi, right? So what the Rebbe Rashab is saying is the mitzvahs will still be there. There'll be a light that overshines them. But according to the simple Peshat and Nida, the mitzvahs won't be there because you're going to be able to get up in a mitzvah lo saseh, and that doesn't work, right? It seems like the mitzvah will actually be nullified in its simple meaning, which it means it won't be a mitzvah anymore, right? Fine. Back to this drawing board yet again. Dalit. Yuvan behektim adir basugya. So now let's take a deeper look. This concept, if we look at mitzvahs batelos lasid lavo in the Gemara, let's learn the actual Gemara. The Rebbe brings pretty much this whole piece. He says, Beged she'avid bo kilayim, a garment which was made with a mixture of wool and linen, kilayim, o simen tachris l'meis. Okay, you can make a garment for the dead out of it, as we know. And we know this as well. Amar Rav Yosef, right? What does Yosef come and say after that? From here we see mitzvahs batelis lasid lavo. There won't be mitzvahs in the future. Amar, it doesn't end there. Amar le Abaye, v'itei Rab Dimi. Abaye, or some say Rab Dimi, came along and said, V'ha Amar Rabbi Mani, Amar Rabbi Yanai, lo shanu el l'savdo aval lekovro aser. This apparently is a machloikis, right? It comes out in the name of the Amoraim over here, that when is it that you can put these garments on a dead body? Only when you're eulogizing him. But to actually bury him in those garments, you're not allowed. So it's not so simple. We just changed the whole conversation. Amr le, lav itmar Allah, Amr Rabbi Yochanan, afil lekovro. Oh, now they come back and argue again. But wait a second. Didn't Rabbi Yochanan say that you could even bury him in it? So this is now a machloikis, whether you can bury him or just eulogize, right? So they said, yeah, Rabbi Yochanan said you could even bury him in it. True. But Rabbi Yochanan, the time, Rabbi Yochanan goes according to his reasoning. The Am Rabbi Yochanan, my tikasi b'meisim chavshi. Rabbi Yochanan has a drasha on this Tehillim, which says that the dead are free, right? What does it mean the dead are free? Kevin shemeis adam naisei chavshi mina mitzvahs. Since a person dies, he becomes free from the mitzvahs. That's what the Gemara says, right? We're going to see that that's not such a good answer or a simple answer. Let's just go through it again so we don't get confused, right? We come with the idea of Rabbi Yosef, who says that mitzvahs are batal because you can bury him, because you can put them on a mace. Abaye comes along and says you can only eulogize him, but you can't bury him in it, right? And then we come back and says, no, Rabbi Yochanan says you can even bury him in it, but Rabbi Yochanan goes according to his reasoning, which is that when the Meisim Chavshi, when a person is dead, he's batal from the, he's no longer obligated in the mitzvahs. The Rebbe says, L'chora Tamua. We have a major question on this. So maybe it's your question? He's saying, no, he's saying he has a body, but he's a dead body, right? And therefore you can bury him in it alive. He's in a goof, but he's dead, right? His body's in the grave, wrapped in kilayim, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, he's saying that you can bury him in it because he's dead, and mitzvahs are not shy to dead people, right? Okay. So that's the Rebbe's question, right? Look, so the Rebbe says, hold on a second, this is like a super weird response from Rabbi Yochanan. Right, exactly. That Rebbe is going to say that this Gemara makes absolutely no sense, which is what the Rebbe likes to do, and then tell us why it does make sense. Taimosh Rabbi Yochanan, this reason of Rabbi Yochanan, Kevin Shemeis Adam Naisei Chashuv Mina Mitzvahs, This, that he says a dead person is no longer obligated to mitzvahs, mahani shekol zman shumeis. That only helps when he's actually dead. Ein alav mishum isur kilayim. Yes, we'll all agree. He doesn't have the prohibition of wearing kilayim when he's dead. Aval lo mahani zman shalach tichiyah. This doesn't help. But the whole time after he wakes up and lives. And isn't this what the whole conversation about? From here we learn mitzvahs are batul in the future. Why? Because he's going to get up in kilayim. So the fact that Rabbi Yochanan comes along and says that you can even bury him because dead people are free from mitzvahs is like a super weird introduction to this conversation when he's really trying to, the whole conversation was that he's going to get up and not be dead when he's wearing that kilayim. When he's going to get up in those clothes that he was buried in them. Guess what? Then he's alive, and this whole drasha of Mesim Chavshi is no longer relevant because he's going to be wearing kilayim when he gets up. The Kavan Shekain, Ein Azman, the time was Rabbi Yochanan. Since that's the case, the time of Rabbi Yochanan, where it says B'Mesim when they're dead, is not shaykh to the time Shabot Tzrich Tamos Rabbi Yosef of what Rabbi Yosef is discussing, which is that when he says mitzvahs are batul in the future. Rabbi Yosef said mitzvahs are batul in the future. We learn from this case because of the time when he gets up. Rabbi Yochanan says that you can bury him in this garment because the time before he gets up. So why are they even arguing with each other? How has the Gemara come back and try to refute Rabbi Yosef that mitzvahs are going to be batul with this business of Rabbi Yochanan who says you can bury him in these clothes when he's not even talking about his rising in those clothes? It's a very strange answer of the Gemara to bring this from Rabbi Yochanan. Is everyone following along? It takes a minute to digest it all. Kind of following? So one more time.
Wait, what was the reasoning for you being allowed to eulogize them in the things?
That seemingly everyone agree on because a dead person's not obligated to mitzvahs.
So the problem arises with regards to burying him in it. How can one opinion let you bury in something that is going to make the dude sin when he wakes up?
Rabbi Yosef wants to come and say you can bury him in these garments because when he gets up, he won't have any more mitzvahs on him because mitzvahs are batul. Right? And then we try to argue with that and say, no, you can't bury him in those clothes. Right? Abaya comes. And then we said, yeah. Rabbi Yochanan says you can bury him in those clothes. But it seems like Rabbi Yochanan is sort of like siding with Rabbi Yosef in that you can bury him in those clothes, which would seem to mean that he agrees that mitzvahs are batul in the future. The only problem is the reason for Rabbi Yosef that you can bury him in those clothes is because you can bury him in those clothes when he's dead, not when he rises again. So it almost has nothing to do with the original premise that mitzvahs will be batul. Seemingly Rabbi Yochanan would agree that when he gets up and he's alive, he does have the mitzvahs, and therefore you shouldn't be able to bury him in those clothes.
Why
It's only good when he's dead.
Why can't we attribute the premise of Rabbi Yossi with that of Rabbi Yochanan? Just because Rabbi Yochanan says the reason why you're not allowed to bury him.
We essentially are bringing Rabbi Yochanan as like a proof to Rabbi Yossi because Rabbi Yochanan's pushing for the fact that you can bury him.
Right.
The only problem is when they come and give the reason, they give like a side reason which no longer helps us in our proof. It was brought to bring a proof for Rabbi Yosef.
But it could be that he also agrees with Rabbi Yosef.
But it says, why? But it literally says, what's the time of the Rabbi Yochanan? What's the reason for Rabbi Yochanan to say you can bury him? Because Mesim Chavshi. He literally says, he holds like that you can bury him in those clothes because dead people do not have mitzvahs. So that totally undoes the flow that we were trying to go with, that mitzvahs are batul in the future because he's going to rise up in those clothes when he's alive and no longer have the mitzvah to do.
So that negates him agreeing with Rabbi Yosef as well.
Not necessarily, it's just that he doesn't give the support that we were looking for, right?
Non sequitur.
It's like a non sequitur. He doesn't give. We're using him as a support for Rabbi Yosef, but in the end we take all the power out of it because we basically say the reason he thinks you can bury in those clothes is for a different reason, not for the same time that Rabbi Yosef is all excited to tell us mitzvahs are batul. You follow? Yeah. It takes a second. I mean, don't feel stupid. You have to read this a couple times. It's complicated a little bit. Yeah.
What is those clothes?
Those clothes are clothes that are made out of wool and linen together, which is prohibited for a Jew to wear when he's alive.
Except for Kohen Gadol in the
Yes.
So what reason does he give instead? About he says that, how does he justify then with Chias Meitz? He doesn't? Just doesn't mention
He
it?
doesn't talk about that.
He doesn't talk about it.
He's not talking about the same thing.